Just a quick scar.
Oh, yeah. All right.
I tell you what, a person who believes that this wasn't set up by our own government is an idiot.
Today we're going to talk about active and passive voice. Of course, this definitely deals with verbs. But before we even start talking about active and passive voice, I need to make something clear that there's really nothing wrong with using passive voice. That can be a style of writing. So when we're talking about active and passive voice, we're not really talking about what's wrong and what's right. What we're talking about is what's more acceptable as far as how you should use the language. And more acceptable here means in the business world or in the world of the SAT. But in the world of writing in general, using passive voice is okay. Now I know probably you've seen this issue probably when you're using Word and it highlights a part of the sentence and it says, you know, passive voice, consider revising. And that's mainly because Word is used or was designed for use in an office. And in the business world, passive voice really does a lot to confuse the reader. And in the business world, you don't want to do any confusion. You want to make things very clear and precise. And this is why passive voice is not, is frowned upon in that world. But in the world of writing in general, passive voice is nothing wrong with passive voice. It doesn't mean that the sentence is grammatically incorrect. So as we're going over passive voice, keep that in mind that correcting a passive voice sentence is not in the sense of correcting it in the sense that it was wrong. You're just correcting it in the sense of making it more acceptable to, if you're a test taker, to the SAT, and if you're a future office worker and you have to write memos and things like that, correcting it in the sense of making it crystal clear as far as what you're saying. But if you're just trying to be a writer, then passive voice is okay. So, okay, so that's our discussion today. So let's get down to business here. Active and passive voice. Okay, we're not going to watch that video. In the world of the SAT, of course, we want to make sentences more active and less passive. But first we need to understand what is active and passive voice. Well, passive voice basically it emphasizes the action being performed, okay, and not who's doing the action. And this is this in the world of the SAT is not acceptable. We need to know who's doing the action, and the focus of the sentence should be on who's doing the action and not just simply the action being performed. The passive voice, it has two main uses, of course. This is why I said that it's not wrong, because it does have some use in the world of writing. And that is, when you're trying to present ideas objectively, you definitely want to use passive voice. So you show that what you have discovered is more important than you discovering it. Or if you're talking about someone else discovering something, that discovery is more important than that person who made the discovery. And you want to also avoid using, if you want to avoid using names in order to assign blame, then you're going to use passive voice. In the real world, we call this talking behind someone's back. And when you want to avoid talking about a person and an action they did, you just talk about the action. You don't talk about the person. You say, somebody broke the window, but you don't want to say who, although maybe you know who broke the window, but you don't want to say that. So you just say somebody broke the window, or the window was broken by someone. And you can avoid using that, making it an issue of who broke the window and more of an issue of the window being broken. So these are two really good uses of passive voice. So that means that you, in some instances, if you're a writer, in many instances, you're going to use passive voice. But in the test taking world, you're supposed to avoid it at all costs. Okay, so let's look at how a passive voice sentence is constructed. And when we look at how it's constructed, it's easy to see, what needs to be changed if you need to make it active. Now, a passive voice sentence, basically, it begins with a thing rather than a person. And of course, we usually have our two-word verb. And I think it's probably better for us to see what we're talking about here than to talk about it. Okay, is or was, of course, when we're talking about the two-word verb, followed by a past tense verb. They sometimes, of course, end with phrase. Talking about passive voice sentences, they end with the phrase, and in the phrase has the person who is or was doing the action, and it starts with by. It starts with by. So this is like classic passive voice, although all passive voice sentences may not necessarily end with one of these types of phrases. Let's look at a sentence here. All expenses were approved, and here's our two-word verb here. Were approved, were being the helping verb, and approved being the past tense verb. So all expenses were approved by, and here's our phrase that actually contains who is doing the action. By the CEO. And the CEO, of course, is doing the action. So therefore, we place the CEO in the by phrase. So if we wanted to change this to active, and I know we're going to talk about it in a second, but I just want to show you. If we're going to change it and make it active, then we would simply take the CEO, put it at the beginning, and I'm not at the beginning, maybe place all expenses after approved. We say the CEO approved all expenses, and we get rid of the helping verb and just return this back to its proper past tense verb form. And we get rid of course, the by, because we no longer need the phrase. So the CEO approved all expenses. So there is clear, crystal clear, direct, without going around any corners. We know that the CEO is the one who did approve the expenses, and we know that immediately, and not discovering it at the end of the sentence here. Okay, so. Let's review this. It starts with a thing, which is all expenses. All expenses here is actually doing the action, not the CEO. I mean, technically, because the all expenses, of course, is a noun and is coming before the verb. So therefore, technically, in the common, normal way a sentence is set up, this is doing the action of were approved. So all expenses were approved. And of course, it's our two-word verb by the CEO, which of course we could even leave it out. We don't necessarily have to have the by phrase. So I wouldn't, when I'm trying to decide whether a sentence is passive voice, I really wouldn't include looking for the by phrase, because often the by phrase is not even going to be there. So what we're really looking for is the thing doing the action. The thing coming before the two-word verb is probably what you want to look for most when you're trying to decide whether or not the sentence is a passive voice sentence. Okay, so let's continue here. And now that we've talked about passive voice and we talked a little bit about active voice, now let's really talk about active voice here. Active voice, of course, is the most preferred type of business writing, and I want to emphasize that because I don't want anybody to think that I want to become a writer one day. Oh, I can't use passive voice. Well, that's not going to be really possible for you even to not use passive voice when you're writing. But in the business world, it is possible to avoid passive voice, and it is encouraged that you do so. Okay. It's shorter, it's more personal, and it's more forceful. It makes you sound like you are decisive in your writing, and you're able to, just get right down to the point, and you're not trying to, avoid things or go, or go around the corner with what you're trying to say. You're just saying it directly, and this is what is wanted in business writing. Active voice sentences, of course, the subject of the verb performs the action, meaning you have the subject who is doing the action at the beginning and not at the end with the by phrase. Let's look at a sentence here. I heeded the solution. Of course, I is the subject. Okay? And heeded is the verb, past tense verb, the solution. So if we wanted to make this into passive voice, then we would just take the solution, put it at the beginning, put I at the end, and put it in a by phrase. The solution, and put a helping verb before heeded. The solution was heeded by I. Or in that case, it would be by me, because we would need the objective case pronoun. So if we wanted to make it passive, but of course we have it active here. Another active voice sentence. You made a mistake. You made a mistake. It's clear who made the mistake. You're not trying to beat around the bush. Now, if we wanted to make it passive and we didn't want to assign blame to anyone, then we would simply take a mistake, put it at the beginning, and just say, and actually leave out you completely. Or if you wanted to add a pronoun, we'd say someone. How about that? So let's do it both ways. Let's look at it both ways. First way, nobody's even being implied. We just say a mistake, and we need our helping verb, of course. A mistake was made. And then here we have our passive voice. If we wanted to just include the by phrase, because we love by phrases, we would say a mistake was made by someone. And now we don't know who. We know the mistake was made, and we know it was by someone. It didn't just happen by itself. Okay, that is how we would, change that active voice into a passive voice. But if you just wanted to, point your finger at somebody and say that person did it, then you say you made a mistake, and keep it clear and concise and all of that good stuff there. That's what the SAT like that. Okay. Okay, now let's go over some examples here. Okay, so here are the instructions. Now we're gonna decide whether these sentences are active or passive, and then we're gonna decide whether they should be changed. Of course, it's up to you whether they should be changed or not. Since they can go both ways, I say let's just change them, okay? If they're passive voice, let's keep down confusion. All right, so let's look at this. Okay, so let's take a look at this. The new procedure is thought to be superior by the president. Now, of course, I know you saw it right off. You saw the by phrase, pretty much, no doubt, this may be a passive voice sentence. Then we back up a little bit, and then we see our helping verb is, thought being the past tense verb. So probably this is definitely going to be a passive voice sentence. But the question is, how do we make it active? We know it's passive. All right. Let's see. The president thinks the new procedure is superior. So that all we did was take president, put it at the beginning, change, get rid of the helping verb, and change it. Well, we didn't necessarily have to change thought to thinks. We could have kept it that way. At any rate, but we did, and we got rid of the helping verb. So now we have made it passive, got rid of the by phrase, of course, because we took and put procedure where it's supposed to be, or the new procedure. Okay, so let us continue here. All right, so now let's just get down to business here. Let's talk about the SAT. Here we have our SAT sentence, and let's see now that we have a little bit of experience recognizing passive voice, because we're definitely looking for passive voice. That's basically how they test you on the SAT. They make a sentence passive, see if you can detect it, and you have to correct it. So let's look at this sentence and see if we can detect some passive business going on here. Because their flight was missed, the bride's parents ran frantically to another part of the airport to catch another plane that might still arrive in time for the wedding. Okay, so I guess we can say maybe, because we do have a two-word verb, helping verb plus past tense verb, so possibly we have something going on. We don't have the by phrase here, so we're going to have to go with our gut feeling, and I think our gut feeling is going to say yes, it is passive because of the two-word verb. So now we need to figure out how we're going to correct it, and we know A is wrong. Because the bride's parents missed their flight, they had to run. Maybe we'll keep that one. The bride's parents had missed their flight, thus finally, no, that don't even sound right there. We get rid of C. The bride's parents had missed their flight, then they ran. The comma is wrong there. The comma shouldn't be there. So therefore, we're going to get rid of the D. Comma shouldn't be there, of course, because, then, of course, starts a subordinating conjunction. And that's just not how it happens in the conjunction world. Their flight was missed, which eventually caused the bride's parents. So now we're confused about who there is referring to. Could be referring to somebody else. So I think we're probably going to go with B. Yes, and if you said B, you're perfect. Congratulations. Anyway, let's go to another SAT sentence, see if we can detect the passive voice sentence. Researchers tend to praise studies that agree with their own conclusions, and it is rare for kindness to be shown to contrary theories. Okay, so let's look at the underlying part here. Conclusions. And now we know comma and is starting our next independent clause, because we know comma and is a coordinating conjunction. So that helps us know that maybe there's something going on with this sentence. And it is rare for kindness to be shown to contrary theories. Kindness to be shown. Don't know. That's a really good question here. What do you think? I want you to look at that sentence and you decide now. Now I'm going to step back and allow you to take over. Okay. Take your time. Take your time. Don't take too long. Well, now, you can pause it, of course. We ain't got to wait for you to finish the whole thing. Okay, so, yes, yes, you're absolutely right. The problem was here, of course, it is rare for kindness to be shown. And, of course, I think probably we noticed that, there was too many infinitive here. Why? I mean, this is just a crazy sentence here. Excellent if you got it right. Yes. Anyway, I guess that's where we're going to stop. Passive voice, active voice, not a really difficult concept to get, and I hope you got it. And in the future here, when you're thinking about active and passive voice, remember, if you're a test taker, active voice is always, what is wanted. If you're in an office, active voice is always wanted. If you're a writer, active or passive voice, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean the sentence is wrong because it's passive. It just means that it's not acceptable in some situations. You have to decide whether the situation you're in is acceptable or not. That does it for us. We are out of here, part 6. in Islamic school.
We'll talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, that's rolling the hard way. We don't want to roll quite that hard. We want to get one of them little minibuses.
What's up?
Tell you what, a person who believes that this wasn't set up by our own government is an idiot.
Everybody's gone out of their mind.
Welcome to Mr. Quick's class.
Welcome to Mr. Quick's class. Welcome to Mr. Quick's class. Welcome, Mr. Quick's class.
Oh, yeah. All right. All right.